You know what we never saw more than once? The gobbledygooker. I'm not gonna go into the specifics of this other than to say WWE never tried it again because it was blindingly obvious that it was an awful idea. Building up to a giant egg hatching before having Hector Guerrero in a massive chicken suit running around like an idiot was a huge mistake. It let the fans down, and I would assume Hector's parents weren't best pleased either, probably told all their friends he was an accountant. This rule isn't universal by any means though, and sometimes WWE thinks the reason a concept didn't work was just bad execution and tries it again. You know what happens? The same damn thing because it was the idea in the first place that sucked. It's like a paper raincoat. No matter how many times I try and sell it to you, you're still going to get wet. If you would like one, please do get in touch. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 flops WWE should never have tried again. Number 10, bragging rights. In 2009, WWE made two errors. The first was the pay-per-view known as Bragging Rights, a team-based show, which was going to air a month before Survivor Series, which is a team-based show. I don't think we have to go any further on this point. The second was the basis of the idea. There's nothing wrong with doing Raw vs SmackDown, even if it is better left to the video games, but at no point did it ever seem like the wrestlers cared about what brand they were on. Ever since the brand split came into existence, WWE hasn't done the best job in making you believe that red hated blue and vice versa, so building an entire show around it felt stupid, not least because the winner got a trophy. Which member of the team was going to have to drag that around? Rather than just leave it be, WWE trotted it back out a year later and doubled down on it, only this time there was the eyebrow-raising point that feuding wrestlers were now putting their differences aside just because they wanted to go and beat the other brand. Yeah, right, neither show drew that well, and thankfully we haven't seen it since. That doesn't mean it's dead. Number 9, blindfold matches. Jake Roberts and Rick Martel deserve to be knighted given what they did with their blindfold match at WrestleMania 7. Deciding to focus on comedy helped it stand out on a 14-match card, but let's not go too far. It was a quirky thing to try, but that should have been it. Ain't no one using the network to rewatch it, and yet we've still received more over the years. There was Triple H vs D'Lo Brown from Raw 2002, a lost classic, as well as Jamie Noble and Nydia toying with the idea at No Way Out 2004. Finally, Santino Marella and Drew McIntyre of all people tiptoed around the rings with bags over their face on a random SmackDown taping. Santino won as well. While it can make for interesting viewing if you've never seen one, it's not the same if you have. They all follow the same layout because they have to. You can't pretend you can just see. Best used on house shows. Hopefully WWE won't feel the need to have one on television anytime soon, but as we've already said, do not bet on it. The summer isn't too far away, and we all know what happens to Raw and SmackDown in the summer. The heat must get to the writing team. Number 8, the anonymous Raw GM. This was just a bust, which was unfortunate. When Michael Cole started to become the voice box for a secret GM in June 2010, the possibilities were endless. Was it leading to a new style of authority figure? Which heel was up to these games, or maybe, just maybe, was Cole of all people up for some kind of weird mega push? The answer to all of these was no, because it was Hornswoggle. Chosen you would think because WWE couldn't think of an interesting way to pay it off, the company reverted to comedy, which is always a dangerous bet. It wasn't satisfying in any means, and made months of stories worthless, especially as afterwards he just vanished with no explanation whatsoever. For some reason, WWE brought it back in 2014 as a one-off, which terrified audiences everywhere in case history was going to repeat itself. As it turned out, it was just a cameo before the authority seized power, but still, don't tease us with bad eggs, and don't come up with these mystery storylines if you don't have a payoff. Number 7, any tag team whose name starts with new. Throughout the history of wrestling, there's only one good new thing, and that's Daniel Bryan. Everything else has been a bust. A kiss of death these days that usually ruins a gimmick before it gets started. It feels lazy because what the fans are essentially being told is that nobody could come up with a fresh idea. So instead we get the new Rockers, or the new Blackjacks, or the new Legion of Doom. It doesn't make sense when you break it right down, and it's bad off the bat because they're never as good as the originals. How could they be? They're already in the number 2 position. The reason it works with Bryan is because he isn't redoing something. In fact, his environmentalist act actually feels pristine, and now you can't envision it being done by anybody else. It is in fact new as opposed to wearing a hat because an old wrestler used to. We're not talking about Malibu Stacy here.
She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid cheap hat!
It started with the aforementioned New Rockers, where Al Snow took the place of Shawn Michaels, and despite not going too well, it wasn't enough. WWE tried again and again and again, and will probably wheel it out at some stage in the future. I look forward to seeing the New Day, which truly will be the end of the world. Number 6, the Punjabi Prison. There have been 3 Punjabi Prison matches in history. 3! How is that possible, especially when 2 of them haven't even featured the guy the damn thing was built for? That is like a Rubik's Cube made of glue, and why WWE has tried this on multiple occasions I will never understand. For one, you can't see through it. Anytime it's on TV, it feels as if you're being punished as a member of the audience, and it's probably worse live, just a mesh of sticks. If visually it's not appealing, I don't see how it would be any better when 2 wrestlers start kicking lumps out of each other. Furthermore, yeah, the Great Khali wasn't in the first one WWE did, as he was replaced due to injury by The Big Show at 2006's Great American Bash. We still did the match though, and I don't think I know the rules now I ponder on such a matter. It doesn't make sense. We've also seen Batista vs Khali and Jinder Mahal vs Randy Orton, and each time it was as baffling as the last. I would like to think at this stage we're done with it, but who can say for sure? If Mahal gets another push or we want some epic encounter with the Singh brothers, it could easily return, but I may not watch that pay-per-view. It's too hard on my eyes. Number 5, the XFL. Right, I'll be honest, I don't hate the XFL and in fact would like it to succeed. I think there's something in having another football league that does something different, and if Vince McMahon is going to be the guy to instigate that, cool. I find it a fascinating venture and respect the boss for trying it all the way back in 2001. It took grapefruits, as he would say. The worry comes in how it affects the wrestling side of things. When it first launched 20 years ago, it was clear that it was meant to be merged with the WWE and get audiences to jump across to both. That stretched resources way too thin and was responsible for a dip in quality and interest, even if the business was about to hit a downward trend regardless. I don't think the XFL helped, even more so when it went under a year after it began. It seems unlikely it would follow this trend second time around, but there's never any guarantees. If McMahon feels as if it needs a boost, he does have a very profitable company sat there which can be used. It's also doubly annoying because if WWE does want to bring something like this back to life, why can't it be IcoPro? Do you know how much I would want a WWE nutrition supplement in 2019? The answer is a lot. I would imagine the market is too fierce nowadays, but I would have said that about American football too. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. Number 4, uninformed celebrities. WrestleMania 2 was an ambitious project. WWE wanted to cross-promote one event in New York, LA, and Illinois way before technology was a point to handle that. It was 1986 for goodness sake. If you had told someone about streaming, you'd probably have been put in jail. It wasn't an utter success, but it was another bold and therefore respectful move on behalf of Vince McMahon. What was not was the decision to put Susan St. James on guest commentary. The actress, who was among many celebs on the show, basically spent the whole time just going, uh-oh, because she had no clue what was going on. That's not her fault. I would assume her agent told her it would be good exposure and Suzanne leapt at the chance, but it did not make for a good experience. It was so awkward it made Kathy Lee Crosby and Elvira, who were also doing this, sound like Bobby Heenan. Rather than learn from this though, we just did it again. At the 1994 King of the Ring, it all came tumbling down once more when an uninformed Art Donovan sat alongside Gorilla Monsoon and Randy Savage. When he wasn't asking how much guys weighed, poor Art found himself being ignored as the other two tried to do their jobs. Given that his paycheck was likely quite handsome, McMahon was probably yelling in everybody's ear to include him more, and when they did, it all exploded into dust. It's happened more throughout the years too, and it will happen again. The draw of the rich and famous is just too much. Number 3, killing off Vince McMahon. When Vince McMahon first tried to kill himself off through a storyline, it was stopped suddenly by the awful Benoit tragedies in 2007. There was no way you could play up to this narrative when a family had actually been killed, even more so as it would have made WWE TV unwatchable. Even as it was, most fans felt the need to take a break. Around a year later though, clearly there was some burning desire to try this again because, well, we did. As Vince stood there none the wiser, the staging around him collapsed as he was trying to give out McMahon's millions, and it was played like this may have been it for the character. Given he was on Raw and SmackDown this week as I say these words, I think it's fair to say this didn't work either. It was all very uncomfortable, however, especially as Shane and Stephanie and others were acting like the CEO was in an unstable condition and may not make it. So it was a fake death, although one that had no endgame, it was just an angle. Like many WWE narratives, it was forgotten as soon as Vince needed to be involved elsewhere, proving that stopping it first time around was the right move, even if that was because of outside events. A small part of me wouldn't put it past them doing it again. Number 2, a giant opponent for The Undertaker. The Undertaker is a large man. Standing around 6'10", he is an intimidating figure, which is one of the many reasons his gimmick works so well. he looked the part. When it came to finding enemies for the dead man though, WWE struggled. When I say struggled, I mean they had one concept they kept coming back to over and over, even if it was never the highlight of Taker's catalogue. Let's go back to the 1993 Raw Rumble. Here the Phenom was ambushed by a man even bigger than he was, which is what the commentators went on about over and over. Forget the fact that Giant Gonzalez was covered in fake hair for no reason, all that matters was that someone with even more size than Taker was threatening to take him down. Then they clashed at WrestleMania 9 and it didn't work at all, in fact it sucked. Fast forward to 2006 and WWE did almost the exact same thing with the Great Khali. He debuted on SmackDown and slapped Taker around like he was nothing, because yes, he was bigger than him. The announcers were obsessed with that again, and this was surely the end for The Undertaker. Nope, it was just another obstacle that he had to have a difficult match with, and why WWE thought this would have changed 13 years later is anybody's guess. It didn't fail because it was the early 90s, it failed because nobody wanted to see it. There's plenty more as well, and before you say it, Kane does not count. His thing was never that he was of greater stature than Taker. He was equal and the focus was on their relationship. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And as we know, it absolutely rocked. Number 1, a Doppelgänger feud. We just mentioned Kane, so let's go all in with that as well, although we'll start with SummerSlam 1994. Here, The Undertaker stepped into the ring with The Undertaker in a match so confusing, young Simon loved it. Because of course I did. I didn't notice that one of these men was noticeably smaller than the other, or that he looked totally different. I just bought in hook, line and sinker. With that in mind, I think WWE deserves a slight pass with this, but I still understand the other thought process. Wasn't exactly a huge draw. WWE felt like they had worked out the kinks in 2006 mind as Kane entered his own Doppelgänger feud. That version of the Big Red Machine would face off against himself from 1998, which was a little hard to follow as one had a mask and the other didn't. The updated version was more into electrocuting testicles, and if you've never seen that, I'm not kidding. Type that into Google now, unless you're at work, of course. The truth was that it was just Luke Gallows in a wig, and WWE gave up on it so quickly you almost felt offended. I don't really know what else I can say other than no, WWE should not have tried this again.